Welcome to Pigskins and Pageantry, a podcast dedicated to all things SEC football. My name is Wes, and I'd like to invite you to join me, Jesse, and Matt each week as we discuss last week's games, news from around the league, make predictions for the upcoming games, and much, much more. What's up, everybody? It's Wes. Georgia survives another one, but the gauntlet isn't done yet, not by a long shot. We've got games to summarize, CFP rankings that just came out as we are recording here, and predictions for another massive week around the SEC. But first, welcome back, Jesse. How's it going?
I'm happy to be back. I appreciate y'all holding down the fort while I was gone. And what a week to be back.
Right. Lots of good stuff to talk about. Matt, what's going on, my friend?
Not much. I got a new hoodie.
I see.
Well, there's that.
Not even a Tennessee fan, and it looks good. I do like the smoky gray.
Yeah. That gray color kind of goes well with the orange, I feel. It's a good one.
And I do have to ask, what's the significance of the Aurora Borealis behind you there?
I don't know. I just went with something that looked cool because I'm wearing a hoodie and I'm in the house and it's like 80 degrees. I don't know.
It is.
It made sense in my head.
I like that it's moving.
I know. Everybody loves a good moving background, right? So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some of those games from last week.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
All right, so first up from last week, Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Ole Miss won 38-35. Matt got the point here. There were a lot of points scored in this game, obviously. Ole Miss enjoyed the lead for most of it, but A&M strung a couple of touchdowns together in the fourth quarter to take the lead 35-31. Then Quinshon Judkins capped off a 100-plus yard rushing day with his third touchdown of the day with 1:40 left in the game, and Ole Miss hung on to win. So, obviously a back and forth battle. Jesse, what were your thoughts on this one?
This one was wild. I did not expect Texas A&M to be able to keep up with Ole Miss this way. It was back and forth and back and forth. But finally, Judkins had a day, right? Like, I've been waiting for him to explode and to get out there. Seems like everybody had shut him down. They weren't really using the run game as much, but thank God he finally had a day. And I guess it shows a little bit of improvement on the Texas A&M offense. I mean, we've seen them kind of show themselves a bit this year, but a decent amount of improvement going against an Ole Miss team, though we have said that Ole Miss's defense is not stellar. So it still surprised me. I think regardless of, offensively A&M being decent and defensively Ole Miss being sus, but this one literally came down to the last minute, and there were several of those games across a lot of conferences this week. It just seemed like the juju was off this week, and you're going to have those weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously you mentioned the defense of Ole Miss, Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator there. So
honestly, y'all can keep him, but I'd be shocked if they do.
Yeah. By the way, did y'all know that his actual name is Stephen Thomas Golding, known as Pete? So
that makes no sense.
It's like a Civil War general nickname.
It's something about these assistant coaches here recently making up like aliases and wearing sunglasses on the sideline and trying to sneak in behind things. It's so weird.
Yeah. Matt, what were your thoughts on this one?
Happening. First off, kudos to Texas A&M. I was anticipating this I know I got the score right for this, but I was anticipating that to be a garbage time touchdown. I was not anticipating them to stay this close. They scored 21 points in the second half. They outscored Ole Miss. They almost came back on them. And there was a lot of yards in this game. 457 for A&M, 518 for Ole Miss. It's almost 1,000 yards between both teams. Again, both teams finding some rhythm offensively. Judkins and Jesse, I want to go back to this. Judkins has had a couple weeks now. He had 102 yards against A&M this week. He had 124 against Vandy, 124 against Auburn, and 177 against LSU. So, he's come on strong since, August, that tail end. We were wondering, where is Judkins? When is Judkins going to show up? He showed up the last couple weeks. So, he's definitely shown some improvement. Jackson Dart has himself another decent day. I think Ole Miss has got a lot of things kind of clicking at just the right time, offensively speaking. The real question is what that's going to look like going forward defensively, especially with the big looming nasty buggers that are the University of Georgia coming up this weekend. So kudos to A&M kudos to Ole Miss for finding a way to win this thing. Jimbo, again, I think is 3 games down now. When you compare his record to Kevin Sumlin. So there's it's like he can't find a way to get above that little ranking. He's still right there with Kevin Sumlin, making a lot more money than Sumlin even stiff. It's getting interesting. It's been interesting, but it's getting more interesting.
Didn't we determine that even if they wanted to get Kevin Sumlin back, that probably wouldn't happen? Isn't he having some kind of legal troubles right now or something? I remember seeing that. I think y'all sent something like that. But anyway, I mean, not critical, just yeah. So that definitely a little bit more of a decision to be made there, I think.
He got arrested for a DUI.
Yeah.
During the bye week.
Yeah.
Not the best move.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to UConn at Tennessee. Tennessee winning here 59-3. I got the point here. I have nothing to say. Jesse, I don't know if you have anything to say. Matt, I was just going to, you're the Tennessee fan. Is there anything that you want to talk about?
First off, I want to take a second to talk about UConn. There was a lot of chipping back and forth before the game. This is a 1-7 walking into Neyland Stadium, a 1-7 UConn team getting chirpy with the guys on the field before the game, warming up on the Tennessee half. Like they're doing some things, like they're doing stuff that you don't do when you come into somebody else's house. I mean, I'm all for trash talk. I'm all for trying to intimidate your opponent before the game. I got no problem with that, but UConn upset the boys and they let them have it with both barrels. Almost 650, over 600 yards in this game for the Tennessee offense. A great effort both ways by offense and defense and special teams. The defense in this game had 3 touchdowns, which is unheard of with our offense, our defense over the last couple of years. Again, I know I have to temper my expectations. This is a really bad UConn team. But still a lot to be happy with. Joe had a good day, over 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was very safe with the ball, no interceptions. Jalen Wright continues to show that he's one of the best running backs on the planet. Full stop, period. That's the tweet. Jalen Wright's not getting the respect he deserves. He needs to have more. Absolutely. I don't know. We're not doing that. Nico comes into relief a little bit in this game. Looks pretty good. Gets himself his first touchdown as a volunteer. So there's a lot to be really happy with in this particular game. Squirrel White had a day. He had 2 catches for 94 yards, one of which was an 83-yarder. It was a pretty lengthy one. Ramel Keaton also with a touchdown. McCallum Castles, who's a freshman, if my memory serves me correctly, he came in and got a touchdown as well. There's a lot to be really excited about with Tennessee football going forward. Not to mention the fact that Tyler Barron had a scoop and score in this one. The defensive secondary had a couple, I think 2 returns for touchdowns on interception. So lots to enjoy in this game. It's a good little wind up before we go into next week.
Yeah, a few big ones coming up for Tennessee right in a row. So
yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Arkansas at Florida. Arkansas winning this one in overtime, 39-36. Nobody got the point here because we all picked Florida. While A&M was going back and forth with Ole Miss, basically the same thing was kind of going on in the swamp here. Florida gave up 226 yards on the ground in this one, including 103 yards to Raheem Sanders and 92 yards to KJ Jefferson. Billy Napier said they had a tough time getting Jefferson on the ground, and clearly that affected the game. Still, Florida had a chance to win at the end, but missed the 44-yard field goal. In overtime, they kicked a field goal, but on the Arkansas possession, KJ Jefferson passed to Tyrone Broden for a touchdown that ended their 6-game skid and is the first Arkansas win at the Swamp. So that's a stat. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
First off, I want to go on record as saying KJ Jefferson is not of this planet. That dude's from another galaxy altogether. He came in and completely dominated, like not dominated, but he came in and kind of changed the course of this thing. He looked like KJ Jefferson of last year.
Different
Definitely
OC.
was, and there within might be the issue. They got rid of the old OC, brought in somebody different, and he uncorked in this one. He had over 300 yards of total offense, 92 on the ground, 255 in the air, and 3 TDs just by himself. So I mean, he had a heck of a day. And there were a couple plays when I was watching the highlights for this game, like he was rolling people over, just bumping them over, knocking them down. There was one part, and I stopped it, and I was watching. It was somebody. I was watching on my phone, and I backed it up. I was like, look at this. Safety comes up to make a play and does the absolute worst attempt at a tackle I've ever seen by safety. Like, just kind of, and I've seen Tennessee safeties have a field day with that kind of thing, but just comes up and just kind of not even whiffs on the tackle. He like does like one of these little numbers where he like kind of just bounces off of him, and KJ just keeps going.
You can't get KJ down with
I
that.
mean, you couldn't take him down.
can't.
Nick Saban said it was the best play he's ever seen, where he just
he's Houdini, man. He's crazy. You give that kid a chance in the NFL, he may, especially with the way offenses are keyed up right now. You know, they like those mobile quarterbacks. I mean, look at who's in the league. You got Jalen Hurts. I just had a brain fart. I mean, look at what I just had a brain fart. No, well, Lamar Jackson too. Quarterback of Tennessee.
Dobbs.
Josh Dobbs.
Thank you. Look what Josh Dobbs did this past week in the Vikings game. I mean,
well, he's an aerospace engineer, so
yeah, well, he's way too smart. But I mean, kudos to Arkansas. Florida, I don't know what to do about Florida. Florida's not making a whole lot of sense. If I'm a Florida fan, I'm hitting every button I can.
I've seen a lot of panic buttons being pushed.
Yeah,
lately.
If you check Twitter right now, there's been a lot of people that are not real pleased with this. And also, and I'll say this last thing and I'll shut up and let Jesse go. I take back everything mean I ever said about Graham Mertz. That kid can ball. And he did in this game. 3 touchdowns, over 280 yards in the air. He was safe with the football as well. He plays really good ball. If he just had a little bit better offensive line and a little bit more stuff to throw to, hey, he would be a real big problem for the SEC. But Florida's going to have to figure something out here soon. They're 5-4 right now. They're 3-3 in the conference. It's not how you want to start off.
Right. By the way, as we're talking about OC for Arkansas, currently the interim OC is wide receivers coach Kenny Guyton. I believe that's how you pronounce it. My next guess was going to be Guiton, so I'm pretty sure that's yeah. Anyway,
you play at LSU?
Yeah.
They probably don't say it that way in Fayetteville.
Yeah, probably not. Jesse, you have any thoughts on this one?
I mean, it's just a bad look for Florida. When you lose to an Arkansas team that has been pretty unsuccessful, I mean, I understand when they lose, it's not by a huge margin, but they've been unsuccessful this season. And for you to lose in the swamp,
yeah,
it's a bad look. And it's like Matt said, it seems like they have the quarterback that has talent. It was the same thing we saw with Anthony Richardson. He had talent. He was a star. We saw it when he went to Pro Day. We saw his combine. Insane. But it's like there's nobody else around him. And I don't know from a recruiting standpoint what they're not doing and why they're not getting those position players in place when they're recruiting so that their quarterback has someone to throw the ball to. I mean, ETN, he's great, but when you shut down the run game, you have to have a passing game. And it's like, there's just, where's the O-line? Where are your position players? And also, has anyone recruited someone on defense? I mean, it's not a good look. Coach Napier, I know, didn't come into a great situation when he got there, and we were concerned that he wasn't the guy. And I don't know. And again, we've talked about it a lot. The Florida faithful are not a patient group, and the boosters are not a patient group. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening down there in the swamp. I think this is a huge win for Arkansas because I know the Arkansas faithful were starting to call for Coach Pittman's seat to get a little toasty. So hopefully winning for the first time in the swamp starts to cool that down a little bit. But again, it's like Matt said, watching KJ Jefferson is insane. He's huge. I mean, just physically, he's a huge human being.
He's a big boy.
Hard to take down. He's athletic, he's mobile, and he's gritty. So if I'm an NFL team, there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking at him when he puts his name in the draft.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, seat warmers just being passed around right now, apparently.
Seriously.
So, all right, let's speaking of, well, maybe not hot seats, but could have been if this one would have gone awry. Jacksonville State at South Carolina. South Carolina won this one 38-28. I got the point here. Yeah, South Carolina messed around in this one, and it was tied 28-28 near the end of the third quarter. But in the fourth, they got a field goal and a pick six to put the game away. And Shane Beamer said they were going to celebrate the heck out of this game. So I know Matt has a lot of feelings on that. Let's start with Jesse first. What do you got on this one?
This is tough. I mean, you look at the stat line and you see the Jacksonville State had 4 turnovers. You take away those 4 turnovers, this game might be a little bit different, and it might be very, very embarrassing. It was already slightly embarrassing, but it might be hella embarrassing at this point. I'm concerned. Again, I like a lot of what Coach Beamer does as far as culture and rallying the guys and starting to build an identity there. But I have to wonder, like, who sits behind Spencer Rattler? Who are they getting next season? Because he's not going to be there. So, and he's the team. So
Kai
like,
Kroger, that's who's there. 0 for 1 in this game.
like, what do you do? Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of what's kept them positive about Coach Beamer, and again, I'm about it, is Spencer Rattler. And I 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. That sounds egregious. But now I'm very curious about next season, because you let Jacksonville State hang around this long with your starters in. Yes, I understand Alabama did the same thing with Central Florida, right? But we had like 2 quarterbacks that shouldn't have started. That started. The rest of our team played like stupid bad. But this was at home. It was bad. It's bad. It's just bad.
Matt?
I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. Let's look at the positives first. Spencer Rattler had himself a decent day. I mean, he threw for almost 400 yards by himself. Xavier Leggett, who I don't recall ever seeing his name before, but again, I don't pay real close attention to.
He's one of their better receivers. Yeah.
But I mean, he had 200 yards receiving in this game. He locked off a big 65-yard run as catch as well. So I mean, there's some good things here, but that's a look, is what that is. And I told y'all last week, I said, listen, this is a Jacksonville State team that's walking in here 7-2. They may find a way to pull this thing off. And Jesse had a good point. If you take away some of those turnovers, this game may be a loss, and Beamer may be crying into his beer about this one. So, Carolina finds a way to get it done, but gracious. Like, I was getting like Tennessee Air Force kind of vibes from back in the day. Like, that's kind of what it felt like. It's like you could see
Air Force had one of those days this week. If you didn't know,
that's true.
They were
That's true as
undefeated
well.
and got their behinds handed to them by me. Woof.
No, I'm sorry, not Tennessee Air Force. I was thinking Tennessee Georgia State. Regardless, it kind of felt like you could kind of feel the car starting to slide off the track, but luckily for Beamer, they were able to kind of get it back on and keep it there. I just, and then Beamer's comment about celebrating like it's the Super Bowl. I'm just like, buddy, you're not doing yourself any favors, because that just, everything he says, I swear, it sounds like it's like I'm listening to Butch Jones all over again. And between him and Drinky and the other couple of guys that are in the SEC, I'm just like, I would rather have another Saban than this. At least Saban comes off like an actual football coach. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin to unpack this thing. I would be wondering what Carolina would look like if Spencer Rattler, God forbid, and Carolina fans don't come at me, God forbid, if Spencer Rattler went down with an injury, what this would look like.
Or if he had never transferred there in the first place.
Or if he'd stayed at Oklahoma. What would Carolina football look like this year? You could be looking at them at what? maybe 2-7, 1-8. Like, I just don't foresee them having a great season if they don't have Spencer Rattler to throw the ball around. So they better do a better job of keeping him safe over the next couple weeks, because if he goes down with a concussion or down with another type of injury, it could get a whole lot uglier in a hurry.
That's the tough thing with the, you're talking about the Beamer isms and stuff like that, is that in this type of situation, I mean, you have to kind of dispel all the bad feelings and all the negativity, and because people are throwing negativity their way, and obviously it's deserved in many instances, but he's trying to keep the team together, trying to keep everybody united. And so I think from that standpoint, that's what the motivation for some of his comments are, is, you're going to hear these people talking about us, but we're going to celebrate this win because we got each other's backs no matter what. And I could see how he's trying to spin that. It is a rough situation for sure. So, all right. Next is a Missouri at Georgia. Georgia winning this one 30-21. I got the point here. Listen, Missouri played a heck of a game on the road in a hostile environment for the most part. The biggest difference maker in this game was probably securing the football. Georgia had 0 turnovers, and on the other side, Brady Cook had 2 interceptions, including the big man pick by Nazir Stackhouse. That might have been the biggest play of the game. And then a late interception by Javon Bullard that sealed it. So, I'll say ball security. And then also Peyton Woodring, the kicker, came up big in some key field goals that kept Georgia's lead more secure. I mean, let's be honest, that lead probably looked more secure than it was because of those field goals. So clutch there. McConkey had another clutch game, no touchdowns, but still 7 catches for 95 yards and some big plays there. So, that's really the main summary I have there as a Dogs fan. Matt, what do you got? What's your thoughts on this one?
This one was actually closer than I thought it was going to be. I was anticipating Georgia to kind of start to pull away in the second half, and they kind of did, but also kind of didn't. I think if you take those turnovers out, then this score's a lot closer. If you miss one of those field goals, I mean, you're looking at 27, 21. I think there was spots there where it showed that Georgia can be beat. The question is you got to put everything together to kind of get that to happen. And so far, nobody's been able to pull that off. Carson Beck, again, has a decent day, over 250 yards throwing, 2 touchdowns. Brady Cook looked okay, again, taking out those 2 interceptions. The other thing that kind of jumps off the page at me is Ladd McConkey's stats here as of late. We were wondering how Brock Bowers not being in the lineup was going to look. Who are they going to turn to? In fact, when that whole situation went down, that was my question: is who's going to step up and fill the gap? And Ladd McConkey's done exactly that. Looking at his last couple of games, through the Missouri game and the Florida game, he has 13 catches, well over 220 yards in both of those games together. So Ladd McConkey's definitely stepped up. When you look at compared to the other ones, I mean, he had 7 catches in this game. The next closest wide receiver had 3 catches. So Ladd McConkey is Carson Beck's A1 target right now. So you got to wonder if people are going to start to lock that down. Is that going to open up Ra Thomas? Is that going to open up the other wide receivers as well? So Georgia keeps finding ways to win. They keep surviving, just like you said, Wes. But the question is it going to last? Are they going to be able to make it through the rest of the SEC gauntlet without taking a loss from somebody? I think they probably will, but then that also makes me wonder what it's going to look like come playoff time when they're matched up with Michigan or Ohio State again. So,
yeah, I mean, the name of the game for Georgia right now on through whatever remainder of the season, if that includes playoffs or not, is just survive, really. I mean, because there's with the exception of Tech, and granted, they beat Miami, and that was a wild one. You could argue Miami beat themselves in that game, but still, it is possible. I really think there's not really any situations where you can let up, and they just got to survive. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this one, I know I didn't have my picks in when y'all recorded the show last week, but I did pick Mizzou. I thought, given Mizzou's track record, oddly enough, this season, which has been very successful somehow, I thought they'd catch Georgia sleeping. And in the beginning of the game, I certainly thought that was an option. And again, it's like Matt said, this game was pretty dang close. I have to admit, as someone who doesn't like either team, I think Georgia having 8 out of 12 games at home is very, very helpful.
And the
and-
one road game they had was in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So pissy about that.
Can't say that I love that as a fellow SEC fan.
Hey, Georgia doesn't schedule their games, right?
Yeah,
It is what it is.
I get it. I'm just saying, it's frustrating, and the dog hopeful are barking at me right now, which is fine. I also, this game got a little chippy. I don't know if everybody was watching it. I felt like this game, and I know people are gonna disagree, I think some of the calls were a little, or lack thereof, were a little, and it probably went on both sides. I think there were some late hits and such that were not called, and Missouri, you take it however you will. UGA, you take that statement however you will. But
That's really, Jesse, just interject. That's really rich coming from a Bama fan. Just saying.
I'm just saying.
I'm so confused right now because I still don't know which team she's talking about.
Exactly. I do. I think it was,
and I watched it, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So.
It was chippier than I thought. I thought there were some calls that I was like, how is that not a penalty? Or how is that a penalty and that wasn't a penalty? Or it was weird. Whatever. Again, I would have been fine if they both lost, but that's not how this is played. It was, like Matt mentioned, interesting to see how Georgia has been able to fill the gap of Brock Bowers. So I think knowing that they have Ladd McConkey, who also had injury early in the season, is able to come back and kind of fill those shoes. It's important. I am very interested to see how they do now that we know how the committee is kind of leaning against out of conference opponents. I would suggest maybe watching their sideline, maybe review some of that tape, see if there's someone there in red and black that looks out of place. Maybe somebody who signed in as Smith Smitherson or something. I don't know, wearing sunglasses, looking a little shady.
He's not with the program anymore, Jesse. You can't go blaming him for things. He resigned.
That's not to say that they haven't found a replacement.
That's a good point.
We'll get there. I know. I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Can't help it.
All right. Well, yes, name of the game, surviving. We'll see, because there's, lots more big ones coming up. Next, Auburn at Vanderbilt. Auburn won this one 31-15. Let's see. Yeah, we all had the same differential. So, and then Jesse and I had the same score, because I think, Jesse, when you were putting in your picks, I don't know if you were able to look at them. So it just happened to be the exact same score.
I was texting y'all because I was not home, and so I was on my phone.
Yeah, that's what I figured happened. Yeah, okay. So we both got the point, because I don't really know how to divide that. We could both get a half a point, I guess. I don't know.
At this point, it doesn't matter. If I get a point, there's no way I actually do anything.
So hey, that's not true mathematically.
No, that is not true, Jesse. There's plenty of football left to play.
It's fair.
That's right.
Only week 11.
But yeah, I mean, so for me in this game, the biggest telltale stat of this game is the fact that Jarquez Hunter rushed for 2 touchdowns in the first quarter and a total of 183 yards in the game. As a team, they rushed for 230 yards to Vandy's 100 rushing yards. So clearly, Auburn consistently won the battle up front. Vanderbilt continued the quarterback merry-go-round with Ken Seals, who passed for 160 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. I think this outcome is what we all expected, though. Jesse, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is exactly what it should have been, right? Even though Auburn is in somewhat of a transition year, this is where they should be. If they had lost to Vanderbilt, then we have a really big question mark and concern. And I think the Auburn boosters start to knock on Hugh Freeze's door, but this is where they should be. I don't have much else to say about it. I mean, it's one of those things where you still have a turnover on each side, which happens, but clean it up. Other than that, the stat line, as far as time of possession, not a huge difference, but you look at that total yardage, Auburn almost doubles Vanderbilt. Again, that should happen.
Y'all remember when Clark Lee first gave his SEC Media Days speech and opened with, "We all know that in time, Vanderbilt will be the best program in the country." Yeah, and so obviously there was a resounding, bit of chuckling in the SEC world when he said that. I kind of was a little bit hopeful, not that Vandy would be the best one day, but that it would bring a different type of outlook. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, look what Franklin did when he was there. That was unlikely. Of course, he used
not super.
What's that?
It was unlikely, but they still weren't.
I mean, they weren't like championship winning, but for Vandy, they were pretty good. As a matter, they weren't the pushover Vandy that we kind of have come to expect them to be. Unfortunately, I think Vandy is always going to be that stepping stone job. You're not going to see somebody stay there and build a program. You're going to see the Franklins build a little bit and then use that to springboard to a bigger position. Anyway, I digress. But Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
Real quick, going back to James Franklin, he went 9-4 in 2012 and 2013. Both of those seasons ended with a Music City Bowl game win and a BBVA Compass Bowl game win. So, and they finished in the top 25 both years. So I mean,
fair. That's fair.
I mean that's something. You get it, but again, that was 3 years, and then he's off Penn State. So
it's also cheaper now because you have all of these programs where people can transfer to, and like, no offense, but yes, I'm sure there's deep pockets at Vandy that can help these kids get NIL deals and whatnot. But at the end of the day, they still have to go to Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
That's not easy when they're just like, oh yeah, I could go somewhere else. Cool. Then I'm not and get underwater basketball. Maybe that's my degree.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Not wrong.
They do have the city of Nashville going for them. There's that.
But it's like in college towns, they're gone most of the time anyways. And when they are there, if you're in a college town, you get in bars for free anyways.
True.
Nashville just becomes more expensive for a college.
Well, that's true as well.
I've heard Nashville called white girl Wakanda, and I can't unhear that. It's true. It's funny. Anyhow, back to football. This is what you're supposed to do when you play Vanderbilt. So good job to them. Jesse pretty much covered all the stats that I was going to talk about in this one. The one stat that did kind of jump off the sheet for me is the third down efficiency for Vanderbilt. 2 for 14. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's bad. It's really not good. And so that's a situation where you're not winning any you're not winning any battles up front. So kudos to Freeze. Let's see what he can do from here. I think once Hugh Freeze manages to find a quarterback that fits his style of play and they finally get a little bit of a defense put together, I think Auburn's going to be a lot better.
Yeah. No, I agree with that for sure. Because like we said before,
Gabe was calling for he was hoping that when Oklahoma joins the SEC, they will be the Vanderbilt of the SEC.
Oh, yes.
I don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening, but I appreciate
that was and I'm gonna get his name wrong. It's Nate, however you pronounce his last name. From he was on SNL recently as well, and he was the guest
SNL episode. Watch it if you have not.
The George Washington one is one of the best.
The Lake Beach. I was like, I've seen all of these situations.
Well, this is true
in my life.
Sometimes a little bit too relatable. So, all right. Next is Kentucky at Mississippi State. Kentucky winning this one 24-3. Jesse got the point here. Mississippi State's offensive woes continue with Mike Wright only passing for 78 yards and an interception. In terms of overall yards, Kentucky didn't do much better, getting 271 total yards compared to Mississippi State's 218 total yards. But they were helped also by a 28-yard pick six in the second quarter. So not a whole lot of excitement here. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
This game went about the way I thought it was going to. We've been talking about Mississippi State and how they've struggled to move the ball offensively. They're 1-5 in the conference right now. They're not having a great season. And again, we were kind of anticipating things to not go pretty well, but I don't think we expected it to go this poorly. So Mississippi State continues to slide. The other thing on this that kind of shocks me is Ray Davis at Kentucky. We're a long way away from that 280-yard outing he had against Florida way back in September. Since then, I mean, he's put together a couple of games. He had 120 plus at Missouri, but it's been very pedestrian in all the other games. Granted, that was against Georgia, that was against Tennessee, that was against and even against Mississippi State, he only had again 80 yards. But I just was anticipating Ray Davis to be more of a factor going forward in this season for Kentucky, and I feel like he's kind of taken a little bit of his foot off the gas. I'm wondering what that looks like, why they've been doing that. Devin Leary is not killing in the air by any stretch, so I don't know why they're not getting able, those run lanes like they want to. But Kentucky, I mean, they're sitting in a weird spot right now. We're gonna have to wait and see how things kind of pan out from here.
Do y'all remember the bowl game of a couple seasons ago between Kentucky and Iowa? And a bunch of the starters were out. You got guys sitting out. Obviously, it was a bowl game, not in the playoffs. And staying out for the draft. And then also, I forget what else was going on, but the final score of that game was like 17-10. There was no offense. I feel like that's sort of the way it is watching Mississippi State's offense almost every week now, without Will Rogers, which I hate to say because I really was eager to kind of see what Mike Wright was going to do with this offense. I liked Mike Wright when he was with Vandy. But so far they just haven't really found whatever clicks for him there. But yeah, Jesse, what were your thoughts on this one?
I think a lot of Mississippi State's woes goes to coaching. I mean, we've said it kind of all season, but when you have a coach that you anticipate being there for a really long time that is no longer there very unexpectedly, and you have to come up with something, and all of these guys on the team are anticipating to play for that other person in a very specific scheme that was just starting to really make some traction because he was just getting his own recruits in there and really starting to foster the system. It's troublesome, right? It's not going to go well. And I think we're starting to see that. You don't have an offense that's able to produce. You don't have the same system. Everyone's just trying to retrofit themselves into something that they're not used to. The culture, I imagine, has changed quite a bit. I can only imagine that most people are not Mike Leach and do not have a culture like Mike Leach does, for good or bad, because when he first got there, you saw a lot of transfers, but he seemed to have found his group of guys. And the defense is not clicking on all cylinders. So it's woeful down in Starkville, which is sad because we all had high hopes for them. I think we were starting to see some sparks for them, and it's just not happening. And I think they have the talent there, absolutely, but it's just a matter of, can they find somebody to lead that team from a coaching perspective, from a coordinator perspective, that's going to stay with the program, foster the program, and bring about some change. And until they do that, again, they're going to have some concerns, and it sucks for those guys because again, they didn't ask for that. It's same when coaches leave voluntarily, these guys are just stuck. And I know we have the transfer portal now, but they didn't sign up for this. And
you're going to transfer, you got to have a place to go.
Exactly. It's tough. So I feel bad for the players at Mississippi State. Honestly, this is a tough situation to be in. And then as far as Kentucky, I agree with Matt. Leary is just he's not doing it for me. And I thought with this new offensive coordinator that things were really going to start clicking. And again, I know they beat the brakes off of Mississippi State, but it's just the Ray Davis, you've got so much talent here. Devin Leary was supposed to be this kind of, messiah for their team. And offensively, I just don't see it. So this was lackluster to me.
Yeah, it wasn't extremely exciting. One game that was extremely exciting was the next one, LSU at Alabama. Bama winning this one 42-28. And I assume this one is the cause of your background, Jesse.
Yes, let me move the chair.
Let's say, what's revision?
But yeah, Jesse got the point here. This was a good back and forth game well into the third quarter. Then penalties and miscues for LSU really kind of started to take their toll on competitiveness of the game. LSU had some big drive killing penalties. There were three. I don't know if y'all saw the three double clutch snaps by the center at various points in the game that disrupted the drives. Then Jaden Daniels got knocked out of the game in the fourth after a vicious hit by Dallas Turner,
which was not roughing the passer, by the way. It was pretty
Don't
close.
even get me started on
It
roughing
was
the passer.
pretty close. It was pretty close.
We'll get there. Okay, yeah. So Daniels was out with concussion protocol right after this, which he actually did come back in the game, which is a little confusing and not exactly safe. But he did.
They don't like a messed up ankle half the season last year.
Right.
Again, take care of your young men.
Exactly. So he was in for like a drive, and then he came back out, and he was in the injury tent, which he was also joined there by his mother as well, which we all figured was probably a sign that there was something not great going on. Defending against Jalen Milroe was a problem for LSU for their defense all night long, and Bama really got him and the running game going and used that to put the game away in the end. Will Riker did have some uncharacteristic misses, but it didn't matter in the end as Bama still won by 2 touchdowns. Jesse, let's hear your take as the Bama fan.
Yeah, I mean, this one, like you said, back and forth. This was a game that everyone was nervous about. It's a revenge game. The way we lost last season was just egregious. It was so tough. So being back in Bryant-Denny and knowing that we had this opportunity and knowing that we need to lock down the West is a big deal. So I think what we saw on Saturday was the first time that Jalen Milroe, to me, looked incredibly comfortable and in sync as the quarterback for Alabama. I think his ability to run the ball, like you said, was a problem. He rushed the ball 20 times for 155 yards and 4 touchdowns. And it looked like he was making decent decisions the whole time. He was able to tuck it and run when he wasn't able to find a receiver. So that seemed to be, I think, a huge difference maker. Is he settled in, he was balanced in his ability to make reads, scramble when he needed to, and throw the ball. On the other side of the ball for LSU, Jaden Daniels is an incredible athlete. I mean, LSU's offense seemed to center entirely around Jaden Daniels and his legs. He was running all over our defense. And, I will say, people will be like, well, he came out of the game. The game was kind of tucked away before he went out. But Daniels rushed the ball 11 times for 163 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. That's incredible. He's absolutely an amazing athlete. Heisman doesn't mean anything, but I think his name should be in that conversation without a doubt. And for a Bama fan, 3rd down conversions actually looked okay for us. We've been struggling to stay on the field after 3rd downs. We were not converting very well. Our percentages were down, but that seemed to be a difference maker in the game for us as we were finally able to keep our offense on the field. We converted 11 of 14 3rd down attempts and were able to score on a lot of those drives. So we also, on the defensive side, were successfully able to stop LSU's offense on 3rd down. And LSU was limited to converting just 4 of their 9 attempts. So again, that's a huge deal for us. You mentioned Riker not being perfect. He surpassed some statistics. It is now a record holder. And luckily, he was still able to hit all of his extra points. But again, he did miss 2 field goals, which is the first time he's missed this season. One from 47 yards, the other from 43 yards. We still love you, Will. And Will Riker, we trust. And it's painful when they zoom in on his face or any kicker's face after they miss, because you could tell it really, really rattled him. And then the other thing I think is we had some decent play calling. I've questioned Tommy Rees a little bit throughout the season, and I certainly questioned and yelled at our former offensive coordinator as well. But it seemed like he dialed up the deep ball in right moments. He was able to implement runs when, we needed it. And we certainly know that Milroe can run, and it resulted in touchdowns. So it seemed like this was the game where offensively our coordinator and our quarterback were finally in sync. We were dialing up the right plays. We had the right personnel executing those plays. So overall, a really, really great game, a nerve-wracking game in the first half, certainly, and into the third, but after that, positive.
Matt?
There's a number I want to say, and I want you to see if you can figure out what this number is. 756.
Is that the total yards or total yards of offense for combined?
For who?
For
No, I was gonna
both
say that
teams
would be much
combined.
more, right?
Much more?
I'm confused.
That-
What do you what are you talking
That is, stay with me, baby bird. I'll feed you. That is the number for rushing and passing for both Jalen Milroe and for Jaden Daniels. So almost 800 yards total offense
just those
between
two
those two
individuals.
guys.
Wow.
That stat is crazy. Again, both of these guys are lights out when they're clicking on all cylinders. Jaden Daniels is a heck of an athlete. Jalen Milroe is a heck of an athlete. We've come a long way since week 1 and week 2 with Jalen Milroe. He looks like a completely different animal now. And Bama's gonna Bama. That's what they did in this game. The thing that kind of stuck out to me in this game is it was back and forth through most of the first quarter, second quarter, and then part of the third. In the second half, Saban does what Saban does, and they outscored LSU 21 points to 7. You can't win a football game if you can't score points in the second half.
Just not shutting them out in the second half, Gary. Gary Danielson, if you're listening, that is not a shutout in the second half, which is what.
Well, Gary Danielson, we've had our discussions about Gary Danielson. By the way, I get to listen to him 2 weeks in a row coming
nice.
up. I'm super excited about that.
Mute it.
I'm not at all. So I'm astounded by the amount of offense here. Both these teams are in, decent shape. I mean, 3 losses for LSU is a bit of a disappointment for them, probably. But that doesn't completely negate the fact that they still have a chance for a decent bowl game going forward. So, and Bama's still in the hunt. If they can find a way to win out and I don't think you can keep a 1-loss Bama team out of the playoff. I just don't foresee that happening.
So Grant did say last week that he thought LSU might be able to score at will. And a lot of Alabama fans took issue with that, especially on TikTok.
They sure did.
That's so sweet.
They sure did.
And one thing that we didn't actually talk about that you sort of talked about, Matt, was the hit on Daniels. But how do we feel about that?
I loved it.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Not anyone getting hurt. That's not what I'm saying.
Right. I know what you're saying.
I don't want anyone to get hurt. Ever. I just don't know how you stop the momentum at that point. How?
Yeah.
I have seen a lot more egregious targeting and roughing the passer hits before. I feel like that was a pretty rough hit, but I don't foresee it being filthy. And I'm saying that as someone that despises everything that wears crimson. So, be aware. Full disclosure here. I hate everything that Bama stands for, but I don't foresee that was a flaggable offense. Did he launch with the crown of his helmet? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but he's trying to make a play on the ball. Or trying to make a play on the ball carrier, trying to disrupt that pass. It didn't seem hugely dirty to me. I just think it's a guy making a football move. I mean, that's what it seemed like to me.
The seconds that pass between launching your body and hitting.
Yeah, it's so fast that you can't make that decision. We can watch it in slow-mo and say, oh yeah, he launched into him and yada yada. Okay, fine, but you're not on the field. It's just like when you have a situation where someone's in combat and they're like, well, you had to shoot that person. Why did you shoot that person? Well, it was a snap decision and I was scared for my life. What do you want me to do? Like, it's just a lot of people are real quick to say this should be a flag, this shouldn't be a flag. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that over the last 10 years or so, we've seen a real steep dive into the quality of officiating that we've had over, top to bottom. It's not been very good. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but I just feel like we're so quick to be like, that's a flag. And so quick to lean on that as an excuse. And the LSU fans are probably screaming at the computers or the screens right now. But I don't foresee it as a dirty play. I think it was a football play. And unfortunately, Jaden got hurt on it. And unfortunately, that kind of swung the momentum a little bit. But that's football.
Right. Yeah, I think the whole injury thing.
Wes?
I think the whole injury thing is obviously unfortunate and definitely not the intent of what Dallas Turner was doing. I did think so. The league has kind of made it clear NCAA has kind of made it clear that, any kind of contact with the head of the quarterback, whether that be with your hand, with your helmet, with your toenail, whatever, is going to be roughing the passer. I do think the roughing the passer was right. I struggle with targeting. You do have him leading with the helmet. You do have him launched. You see both his feet off the ground. The only thing that makes it difficult is he still sort of has his head up in that play. It's not like he's head down straight into him. He did make contact with his helmet, but his head is still up a little bit. So I could see that going either way. I wouldn't have had a problem if it was targeting, but I don't have a problem with it not being targeting either, because it's so, like you said, it's so close and it's so difficult to call. You talk about the officiating going downhill, and it has, but there's also so much to call nowadays too. You think back in the day, a dude lit some guy up, running a slant over the middle. He's laying there, convulsing, with concussion symptoms. And they're like, that was a great football play. Big deal. Yeah. And now it's, obviously the safety is a lot more of an issue, and as it should be. So
not to mention, Wes, as well, that you've got multiple angles, HD television. You can literally see blades of grass during games. Like, you can see so much
right
that you couldn't see 15, 20, 25 years ago. And I think that plays a lot into it now too, because people could hit rewind and be like, well, look, he launches into him, he puts his head into it. Like, there's at game speed, it goes too fast. So
and when you don't have a discernment in the rules about intent, and I know it's hard to determine intent, but we've talked about it with targeting. You can tell somewhat when there's intentional targeting, when it's trying to lay someone out. You can tell when it's unintentional. And the roughing the passer, we've seen it in the NFL. Some of it is absolutely ridiculous. You can't touch a quarterback.
You really can't.
I get you want to keep everybody safe. You want to keep not only the quarterback safe, but you want to keep the person who's tackling them safe as well. 1,000%. Nobody wants anyone's brain to turn to Swiss cheese. That's not the goal here. But at some point, like, barely tapping somebody or whatever. And again, I'm not talking about this play specifically. What do you do at this point? You need to play flag, because you can't hit anybody. That one, I watched it, and I've watched it over and over again. I'm sure some officials would have called it another way. Unfortunately, when it comes to targeting, it is not as uniform as they try to make it. It's not called uniformly. Mm-hmm. It depends on your officiating crew. It depends who you get. It depends who's reviewing it up in the booth. And, back in Birmingham, it's never going to be what it is. I agree with roughing the passer. That's fine. I don't see it. I'm biased. I'll be the first to tell you I'm going to be 1,000% biased, whatever. But I hate that he was hurt. I truly do. Concussions are nothing to play with. But I will say putting him back in the game is not something that I find to be a very smart decision. I don't care how much you want to win a game. I don't care what type of rivalry it is or how much he is complaining and pushing to be put back in the game. At the end of the day, as a coach, you're the adult.
Right.
Your job is to protect these players. And I said it last season when they put him in on a hurt ankle. No.
Especially with all this stuff so fresh in our memories with Tua as well, what happened to him last year. You can't play with that stuff. Yeah.
It's not a pinky. It's not a broken wrist. It is your brain.
Right.
Like, can we say what you will? Like, I think we throw around the word concussion so often, and it just becomes this thing that we say, like, concussion protocol, concussion. It is literally your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Rattling around in your noggin. It's not funny. It's not something that you just play through.
Right.
And again, as an adult, take some responsibility to tell these young men no.
Yeah. And that's why I really like all the that this has come into the forefront of the examination, because what all the targeting penalties have done is it's trickled down, and you're teaching kids the proper tackle form now as well. It's not just about making the big hit and, getting on the highlight reel. It's about proper tackling. So not only do you not injure the other person, you don't injure yourself. So I do like that.
I mean, again, there's so many examples of the long-term effects of stuff like this when it's not taken seriously.
Yeah, well, I'm a Steelers fan, and I cannot forget Ryan Shazier making that hit on a guy and literally paralyzing himself on the field, leading with the helmet. And fortunately, he's had a road to recovery and is walking again and all that stuff. But we didn't know when it happened, so it's can't be played with for sure.
No, Aaron Hernandez murdered people because his brain was Swiss cheese on the inside.
There's a lot like Junior Seau. That was another suicide situation. There's so many.
There's my boyfriend and I were talking about it the other day in basketball. A famous like fan group in this NBA team that we follow. He was a college football player and had a lot of tackles, a lot of concussion history, all of that. Went into the military, had concussions. And he ended up taking his girlfriend and her child hostage, murdering them, driving to his ex-wife's house, murdering her and her child. So he's a quadruple murderer, and he's got Swiss cheese for brain and went into a catatonic state. Yeah. Your brain is not something to play with.
And I still say that's the reason that Antonio Brown went nuts is
he's still nuts.
Well, yeah, it's because of that hit by Vontaze Burfict that literally knocked him out on the field. I swear he hasn't been the same since that hit on the field.
I'm sure if we looked at an MRI, it's there. Like, it's just there, and I want to see football played the same as anybody else. Like I said, I still think some of the roughing the passer is so silly because at what point can you stop momentum? Like, or if you fall into somebody on accident, that's silly. The NFL is much worse about it, but they have a lot of money in those guys. It's like racehorses.
Right. Not to mention the fact that if you look at who's more likely to have an issue with CT, it's going to be running backs, linebackers, cornerbacks, wide receivers. Quarterbacks aren't taking hits to the head that often.
No,
not to say that they don't, but they do.
He's okay.
Man,
they're also more likely to be defenseless though when they're in that throwing motion too. So when they do get hit, a lot of times it can be bad.
And hits are weird, right? Like we saw in the NFL Nick Chubb's hit, where I literally thought it's the nastiest thing I've ever seen hit wise. I thought he was going to lose his leg. I was like, it's it doesn't work anymore. It's got to go. And they come back and like, just an MCL.
Yeah. When I heard that diagnosis, I was like, are we talking about the same person?
Don't see Aaron Rodgers. Do you see Aaron Rodgers is back from his Achilles surgery and he's throwing 50-yard bombs? Like, what are we doing?
Modern
medicine.
medicine.
Makes sense. It's like a hit that looks like normal-ish concussion. A hit that looks like you might need your leg amputated. MCL. You're back in a little bit. It's okay.
No big deal. All right, well, let's go ahead and get to some news because some just broke.
Here's the news.
All right, so latest CFP rankings just came out tonight, just a couple of hours ago as we record, and they are as follows. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Michigan. Number 4, Florida State. Number 5, Washington. Number 6, Oregon. Number 7, Texas. Number 8, Alabama. Number 9, Ole Miss. Number 10, Penn State, and then SEC teams rounding out the group. Number 13, Tennessee. Number 14, Missouri, and number 19, LSU. Do we have any issues with this current state of rankings?
Will there be any airing of grievances?
I'd like to call out Michigan.
Yeah.
They're undefeated.
Here's my thing, and this is the first time I think ever in my life that I'm about to utter the statement. I agree with Stephen A. Smith. Okay. I'm sorry. Until this investigation comes to a close, I want you out of the playoffs. I'm sorry.
They're not going to do that.
No.
They're not going to do. There's too much money wrapped up in Michigan.
That's the tough. What do you do with them? That's the tough thing. They're undefeated. What do you do with them?
But like, there's just egregious evidence of cheating.
Right. Which just goes to show that the Big Ten needs to take the initiative and
Yeah.
go ahead and do something, because I guarantee you, if the person who is most immediately responsible for this team can go ahead and hand out some discipline, then you will get a little bit more official when we get to the NCAA and things like that, and more consequences.
It's that whole situation is insane to me.
Mhm.
And here's the thing. Say Michigan goes on, say they win a natty. When this gets decided in a year or two, who knows, 5, knowing the NCAA, and all of a sudden they say, okay, they have to forfeit this win, then somebody that deserved to be there, that could have been there, that could have won, doesn't get the opportunity. No, I'm so upset with this.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just, I don't know what to do with them until there's some official punishment handed down by one of the governing bodies that be, as a committee. I don't know what you can do with them. I don't know.
I can tell you right now, the Big Ten's not doing jack crap until something evident comes out. Like they've got to have
The
something.
team's in the playoff at this point.
They're not going to say a word until that comes down. And here's the real kick in the coot: is if Michigan and Ohio State play at the end of the season and Michigan loses, you could potentially see a one-loss Michigan team make it into the playoff over a one-loss Alabama team.
Or one
Because think
loss
about it.
Texas, a one
Or
loss
one loss Texas,
Oregon.
or like you're looking potentially at this turning into a really bad scenario. As far as the rankings themselves, I personally don't have an issue with it. I think Ohio State's looked a little bit better, although they're coming off a big game against Rutgers this past weekend, so they
I
definitely
thought
earned that
Rutgers.
one.
Oh, I thought they almost had it. I thought Rutgers
So-
almost had it, and I thought K-State might have had it against Texas. Wow.
The fact of the matter is that these rankings don't matter for a hill of beans until we get to the championship weeks. And once we get to championship week and you start seeing who's winning the Big Ten, who's winning the Big 12, who's winning the SEC, all that stuff, then we can start worrying about these rankings. Until then, this is just castles in the sky. They mean absolutely nothing.
I think the committee makes these choices in the hopes that everything will work out on the field and it'll all work itself out. But there are instances where they do have to make some tough choices, and we might get a few of
last
those.
year.
Yeah,
They did it last year, and they let TCU in over a one-loss Bama team, and we saw how that worked out.
yeah. I mean, it's so tough. And look how TCU played against Michigan. Of course,
Well,
a
it's
lot of
because
that was.
Michigan didn't have a chance to steal their signals.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. They didn't they do the whole dummy signals thing in that one, and
They
that's what
did.
threw them off.
And Josh Heupel's the one that teed them off to it because Josh Heupel knew it was happening.
Yeah.
They need to straight and listen if and when this thing finally comes out. I was arguing with my buddy Grant about this the other day. My buddy Grant's like, it's not a big deal. It's just no different than watching tape and whatnot. And I'm like, but it is though, and there's a
They're
lot
the
to unpack there.
Astros of the NCAA.
It's kind of that angle.
You're
You're
the
not wrong.
Houston Astros of the NCAA.
The fact of the matter is I'm less upset about Michigan doing that, but I'm more upset about the fact that there may be some collusion between Michigan and other teams.
Right, feeding information to other people.
If Michigan was feeding that info to say South Carolina, like they did the rumor is that they did last year, then that took out. Not only did that manage to get Tennessee knocked out of the playoff, that also got Hendon Hooker's knee exploded. Again, would Hendon have had that much trouble if that hadn't happened? There's so much wrong there, and I've said it on Twitter, not X. I refuse to call it that. I said it on Twitter. I've said it to people I know. I've said it to my dad. I've said it to my mother. I've said it to the mailman when he comes to drop off my stuff. I've said it to the dogs that are in the living room right now wondering where I'm at. I've said it before. If this comes down that Harbaugh and that whole deal and that stuff ended up at Carolina, then I hope to God the SEC burns Beamer. And he had better get blacklisted, the death penalty, all sorts of things. But sports death penalty, I don't mean literally kill him.
No, right. Yes, I got you.
You can be careful in South Carolina. They do that.
Yeah.
They do have that.
It's
a hot mess.
It's a hot mess because and here we are with the NCAA and lawsuits about we don't want to play the players and we're we want to make sure that things stay good and amateur. Okay, You want to be the moral police. You want to protect amateurism in sports. Do your job.
The NCAA has no teeth anymore. They are useless. They are pointless. They don't serve a purpose. Everybody just needs to go ahead and say, you know what, we're just going to run with the conferences and call it a day. We don't care what you think.
That's essentially what they're doing.
Right.
Anyways, it's silly and it makes me mad. There's so many like domino effects to this that if things are proven true, it's gonna be an issue. And there are several really good one-loss teams that could go there. Heck, Washington is a no-loss team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot of implications to this that make me really, really mad. And NCAA, be better. Just be better.
It is frustrating to watch something because like it's kind of ridiculous to debate the authenticity of, because so many claims and so much evidence, but still I feel very sure that nothing will be done about this before the end of the season, before the playoffs get here. So anyway.
I would hope that somebody's going to do something at some point.
They'll do something. It'll be after the fact, though. It'll be after the season. They'll have to vacate some wins, possibly a championship if they get that far. And yeah.
We're looking at the same conference, and I hate to bring it up. We're looking at the same conference that had some evidence of crimes against children happening at Penn State.
Oh, that's a good point.
Decades, and did nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of hope in the Big Ten, and their record does not instill any confidence in me because those crimes were egregious. This is frustrating. That was egregious.
The same conference that remember during the COVID year, they got it knocked down to what was the minimum number of games that they had to play? It was
8,
like seven or 8.
I think they only played 8 games.
And it was like we keep moving the number down for one team in particular. What? So it was yeah. All right. Well, that does it for the news. Let's go ahead and talk about the upcoming games.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right, the first game we have is Alabama 8-1, 6-0 in the SEC at Kentucky 6-3, 3-3 in the SEC, noon on ESPN. Matt, let's start with you. What is your prediction for Alabama at Kentucky?
Jesse, don't be mad.
No, you're not.
I'm just kidding. I'm not doing that.
Like, honestly, Matt, I'm just concerned for your well-being. That's now
no. Listen, if this was a night game in Kroger Field, I'd probably think this is going to be a little bit closer, but I think Bama's coming. They're hitting a high point right now. Milrose is playing lights out. The defense is playing decent. I don't foresee them having any issues with Kentucky. So I'm going to say Bama wins this thing big, 42-14.
Okay. Yeah, Kroger Field's a tough place to play, but Bama just got a big win that will continue to give them confidence going into this one, I think. And I think they play a little bit less on edge and more relaxed because of that. I'm going with the Tide 31-17. Jesse?
I agree with it all. I think we're finally starting to hit our stride. Offense is clicking both quarterback and coordinator side. Defense is looking pretty good, and it's a noon game. Woof. So I'm going Bama 42-21.
All right, next is Vanderbilt 2-8, 0-6 in the SEC at South Carolina, 3-6, 1-5 in the SEC, noon on SEC Network. Matt, your prediction for Vandy at Carolina?
I so want to pick Vanderbilt here.
I do too.
I want to pick Vanderbilt so bad because I feel like Carolina's just regressed horribly since the end of last season. And I feel like this is the perfect opportunity for Vanderbilt to pick up an in-conference win. But I just don't see it happening. Vanderbilt's not shown me anything that makes me think they're going to be great at all in any aspect this season. So I think they're going to fall to 2-9, 0-7 in the conference. Carolina wins this thing 21-17.
All right. Yeah. Neither of these teams has impressed this year, but in my mind, Vandy's quarterback carousel has completely undermined any form of offensive identity that they could have had this year. So from that standpoint, and South Carolina's at home, I'm going to say they get it done. Carolina wins 31-14. Jesse?
Yeah, I really wanted to pick Vandy because if you look at these records, they are not that different, which is wild. But I believe in Spencer Rattler over anything else. If Spencer Rattler weren't in this game, I'd probably pick Vandy, but as of right now he is. So I'm going South Carolina 28-17.
All right. Next, Tennessee 7-2, 3-2 in the SEC at Missouri 7-2, 3-2 in the SEC. 3:30 on CBS. Matt gets to listen to Gary. Matt, what's your prediction for Tennessee at Missouri?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. I just listen. Tennessee has confused the crap out of me all season long. They look great. They look bad. They look good. They look decent. It's just I want to pick Tennessee here. I'm gonna say it's within 2 scores. Tennessee right now, I think, is favored by 1 whole point. So
Yeah.
this is gonna be a close one. So I'm gonna pick Tennessee. Just we don't play well on the road. That's the other reason why I'm kind of hesitating. But fine, I'm gonna go with Tennessee 33-28.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're right. Beware
Oh.
the sleepiness of Faroe Field. If this was noon kickoff, I'd be a little bit more worried about Tennessee here because goodness knows Georgia's had its struggles there, especially at that time slot. Like you said, Tennessee favored by 1 here, so it could basically kind of be one of those coin flip situations again. But I'm going to go with my gut here and say that Mizzou pulls off the upset 31-28. Matt, don't be mad at me. So,
I don't foresee that as an upset though. I mean, Tennessee's ranked ahead, but Missouri has definitely played a lot better ball. God, I never thought I'd say that. They've played better ball.
when I saw that the experts had basically they were calling it down the middle, I just sort of factored in Mizzou at home, and so that's why I had to pick them. Jesse, what do you think?
yeah, I've been going back and forth. And of course, last week I picked Mizzou for the upset. So I could just be a week off, but I think this one's going to be a slugfest. Again, these guys have the same record out of conference and in conference overall. Same thing. So it's going to be a slugfest. And I know that Mizzou's going to come in there. They're going to be mad because they didn't take out Georgia. But I think offensively, I'm slightly more confident in Tennessee. So I'm going to pick the Vols in this one. But again, slugfest, it's going to come down to final minutes. This is going to be Vols taking it 35-31.
All right. Next, you got Auburn.
Really need that W.
5-4,
Really.
2-4 in the SEC at Arkansas. 3-6, 1-5 in the SEC. 4 o'clock on the SEC Network. Matt, your prediction for Auburn at Arkansas?
I feel like I have to go with Arkansas after the way they performed this past week. I feel like they're doing a little bit better. I feel like they're in a better position here. Auburn has not done a lot to impress me this season. In Arkansas, looks like they're on a team that's on the upswing right now. So I'm gonna go Arkansas 28-24.
All right, yeah. This is another tough one to pick because we've seen flashes of good play and flashes of awful play from both of these teams.
Sure.
KJ Jefferson at home, coming off a big win. Give me Arkansas 27-24. Jesse?
I'm going against y'all. I hate to do it, but I'm going to pick the exact inverse of what Matt picked. I'm going with the Tigers in this one. I know Arkansas is coming off of a win, but somehow it seems like they've done a little bit better on the road than they have at home. And I think maybe this is going to be a little bit of a hangover game. They are hyped. They're going in maybe a little bit too hyped. I think Auburn obviously has its own issues. There's going to be turnovers in this game. There's probably going to be like 2 per team. And I think it's going to come down to the final minutes in this one as well. But I'm picking the Tigers 28-24.
All righty. Next. And before we get to this game, because we're talking about Georgia, did you know that Georgia's women's soccer team won the SEC for the first time ever recently? I say that my daughter's into soccer, and we're actually going to the opening round of the playoffs on Friday. So that'll be fun.
Okay, that's cool.
Against Liberty. So
Liberty.
That's right. Ole Miss 8-1, 5-1 in the SEC at Georgia, 9-0, 6-0 in the SEC. 7 o'clock on ESPN. College Game Day will be here. Matt, what's your prediction?
Georgia is primed for the upset.
Okay.
Primed for it. I hate that this may result in Tennessee getting the absolute beat out of them next week. Because if Georgia loses this game, they're going to be really angry going into that next game. But I got a feeling. I just got a feeling. I think this is what Lane's going to get it done. So I'm going to pick Ole Miss here, 37-33.
I hear you. Yeah, no, I mean, that's not a bad pick. I mean, it's going to be another fun one between the hedges. Top 10 matchup. Like I said, College Game Day will be there, so it'll be wild and everything. I am curious to see how Georgia plans to stop Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins, because they and the Ole Miss offense, as we mentioned, have been getting a little bit better every week, it seems. Ole Miss's defense also come up big in some key situations this year as well, so a little bit of improvement there, it seems. So as the theme behind me suggests, Georgia has another high-stakes game that they hope to survive. At home at night helps. So I'm going to go Georgia here, 35-24. Jesse?
Matt, I love your pick, and I really am manifesting that it comes true. Like, UGA fans be mad at me. I hate your team. I'm not shy about it. I don't like Ole Miss either, but dadgummit if Lane Kiffin hasn't grown on me. Ah,
You know what else grows on you? Cancer.
he's grown on me. I can't help it. But I don't know. If this were in Oxford, I might go a different way. But because it's a night game between the hedges, I'm just nervous about it. I think Ole Miss gets close. I think they get really, really close. But it's going to come down to a field goal. I'm picking the Dogs 31-28.
I like that pick,
I'm
Jesse.
wrong.
Yeah. All right. Next, Florida at 5-4, 3-3 in the SEC at LSU, 6-3, 4-2 in the SEC, 7:30 on SEC Network. Matt, what's your prediction for Florida at LSU?
This is a night game in Death Valley. You can go ahead and write this down, kids. LSU wins this thing 28-10.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That
Daniels,
is my lock for the week.
That's your lock. Okay. Yeah, Jaden Daniels still in concussion protocols day to day. Garrett Nussmeier would get the start if he can't. I think overall LSU will be big mad after that loss last week. Although Florida did have a loss of their own, I think LSU has a little bit more talent at this point, at least in the game, and is at home, as you mentioned, for this one. So I'm going LSU 38-24 here. Jesse?
Florida couldn't get it done in the swamp against Arkansas. Y'all, it ain't looking good. LSU, like you said, is mad. I would be shocked if they don't play Jaden Daniels. It's a night game in Death Valley. It just signed, sealed, delivered. Tigers take this one 35-17.
Yep. All right. Next, Mississippi State 4-5, 1-5 in the SEC at Texas A&M 5-4, 3-3 in the SEC. That's 7:30 on ESPN2. Matt, what's your prediction for this one?
Look, A&M has had their issues this season, but Mississippi State's had a lot more. So I'm going to go ahead and pick TAMU in this one. I think Texas A&M is going to get out in front early, and I don't think they're ever going to have to really look behind them. So TAMU wins 35-10.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think A&M struggles at all with this one. I'm going to have to go with the Aggies as well, 31-10. Jesse?
Yeah, I'm just like literally changing it. Because I'm remembering Mississippi State's poor, bless their heart, style of play last week. So this is at Kyle Fields, night game. This is terrible for Mississippi State. Guys, you're doing your best. Just remember, have fun. I hope that the snacks at halftime are good. So I'm picking Texas A&M in this one, 38-7. It ain't gonna be pretty.
Yeah. And this week we have a full slate of games, no teams with a bye week. So, all right. Well, that does it for last week's games. Let's do a quick just for fun segment in honor of Veterans Day, which is coming up. We said which SEC coach would fit in best with the military, or which coach would adapt the best to being in the military. Alternatively, which one would fit in the worst? Jesse, let's start with you.
I mean, I think
unless you're not ready.
No, I just go with my heart. Whatever
Yeah.
comes out of my mouth. I don't think about this beforehand. I think Nick Saban would be the best for the military. He's obviously too old to actually join, but if he were of age, I think routine and discipline are very big on his list. So to me, he makes the most sense. I also could see Kirby Smart as like a Marine because he yells a lot and he's like super hyped. He could get in on that one, and they say like raw, and he barks a lot. So like maybe there's some stuff there. The worst. Oof, honestly, I don't think Eli Drinkowitz has a chance.
Yes, he keeps stealing all mine, damn it.
I think it's just it would be rough. He would be like, do you mind if I have my own room? I brought a lot of books and they just don't fit in my cubby. And I don't see anyone liking him.
But he would talk a big game, wouldn't he? Like a lot of Toughness Tuesday talk and
No,
what we're gonna do. And
he's literally the guy that before he goes to basic, he tells everybody he's going to basic.
right.
Yeah, I'm going to basic. I'm going to be a blah, 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 blah. And it's like, bro, you don't even, how are you going to be special forces? You haven't even gone to basic training. He's like, no. Toughness Tuesday. I'm at the recruiter's office every week. And it's like, wow, why are you there every week? What are you doing? That's him. And then he gets there and everyone's like, bro, you didn't even make it off the bus without crying.
He's the guy who's a one-upper, but it's not his own stories. It's somebody else, one of his, squad mates.
Yeah.
That he's telling stories about. Matt, who do you got?
Yeah, Jesse took all the ones I was thinking of, but Drinkwitz right off the bat's the one that probably would not fit in real well. He strikes me as too much of an academic, too much of a, kind of like he's the kind of guy that just, and again, I'm going strictly off of what I've seen from the media. He seems like a big leather armchair reading a book and drinking like a glass of milk. He does not strike me as the type to be in the military. I think Kirby Smart would have to be in special forces. He seems so intense. I feel like he would be right there on the front lines doing everything he could. Sam Pittman and Mark Stoops would be in, but they would be your company sergeants that know how to get around all of the red tape and regulations. And if you need to get off base for something, you go see Sergeant Pittman or Sergeant Stoops. I get that vibe off of them.
1,000%.
Yeah, gosh, it's tough. I think it would be just absolutely hilarious to see Kirby Smart as like a drill instructor and just yelling at guys. That would be fantastic. I think probably overall, when it just comes to rigid militaristic style, I'd probably have to go with Saban. Just because that's just sort of what I think of. As far as who would be the worst, I can't imagine Lane Kiffin doing well in the military. He's just he's too renegade, right? He's too out there. He would never listen. He would want to do his own thing.
We should ask Lane. Lane, did you ever consider a career in the military? You got to let us know.
Yeah, that would have not gone well, I don't think. Yeah,
they would have had him cut his. They would have had him cut his hair. Now. They would have had him cut his hair. He'd have to stop chasing girls on the side. Like it's just.
Yeah, he would just have to go off base for that. But I mean, he's pretty regimented now, from what I saw on game day. He's sober. He like gets up and does hot yoga every morning. Like.
The one thing that he cannot get over, and this is just really a part of who he is now, is the trolling online. He has not changed that at all, and I don't think it's going to. And as it, it's just sort of is what it is now. So
I will say Billy Napier, because he looks like Jason Statham's cousin, might do well. He just has that face, that like no nonsense face. He's the guy that just like goes,
right. You're like, it's funny that you say that about the because I saw some Florida fans who have apparently started calling him the nickname Sling Blade. So, so there's that.
I'm not saying I couldn't see it. Oh no!
If you're looking at the online trolls, speaking of trolls, although that in that instance it's your own fans trolling you. Anyway,
hey, oh my God, he does look. Some people call it a Kaiser blade. I call it a sling blade.
He starts eating a lot of French fried taters.
Wow. You know who would be in the military, but it would be like the Navy, and
Who's
he'd be
that?
on a submarine. Would be Brian Kelly.
Oh no,
He
100%.
seems like he would be like a sub. It's all about the family.
Yeah.
In the submarine. So that just strikes me as
You know who would have been great in the Navy?
don't do that. Don't bring it up. Don't do it. We know.
Who?
Michael.
Who?
Oh yes. Sorry. I would. Yeah. But
Let's-
a different Navy, the pirate, the alternative to the Navy.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
he's like, I don't need that Navy stuff. He's Mike's School of Pirating. So
If Mississippi State, if y'all don't build that in memoriam,
in memoriam for sure. Yep.
What about Hugh Freeze? Is Hugh Freeze involved in this at all? Nah, Hugh Freeze is a civilian.
Yeah.
Freeze
he
tried to get in, and they looked at the charges pending against him for like harassment.
Hey,
and
hey,
said,
he served his time on that, Jesse. Good Lord.
just saying. They looked
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, that's a liability."
While we're thinking about it, we haven't mentioned Beamer. How do we think that would have gone? I just
Not
no,
well.
Not
Not
well.
well.
I agree with you there.
Beamer would end up in the KP peeling potatoes literally every other day.
Okay.
He'll
Heupel.
be riding home, be like, "Mom, can you just come pick me up?"
Yes, I can see that. I can
Heupel?
definitely see that. Yeah.
Heupel kind of falls in that category with Pittman and Stoops. He's that sergeant that knows how to get out of trouble sort of situation.
That's fair.
Right. Who's left? Oh yeah, Clark Lee. I think he'd do all right. It's just something about the baldness and the muscles that I think he'd probably be all right.
Yeah.
I think that's. Am I leaving anybody out?
Jimbo
Zach
Fisher.
Arnett.
Jimbo and Arnett. Yeah.
Jimbo would not.
No, Jimbo. No. Arnett would be fine. He would. Yeah, he'd fit right in, I believe.
Jimbo strikes me as the kind of guy that would have paid for a replacement in the draft.
Yes.
He's a draft dodger.
No, I won't go that far. But I feel like if it was like during the Civil War and they were calling people up, Jimbo would be like, here's my $2,000. You go find somebody else. I have other things to go do.
Right.
I have oil money to go spend.
Wow. All right. Well, that was a good one. I enjoyed that one. Thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to contact us, please do so. Email us at pigskinsandpageantry@gmail.com. We are at Pigskins and Pageantry on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at PPSEC Podcast on X or Twitter, as Matt says. Don't forget we're available for download on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, and most podcasting apps for iPhone, Android, and other operating systems. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and review. We'd love 5 stars. We'd greatly appreciate that. Until next time, another big weekend of games. This is Wes. Go Dogs.
Well, NCAA, do your job. Everybody else, protect your brain and roll Tide.
Yeah, I have to agree with that sentiment, NCAA. We need you to pick up your crap. So take care of business. Let's go.